Hello everyone, thanks for attending this SPL Tech webinar. In this webinar today I will talk about WordPress performance. A little introduction about myself. My name is Armindo Cachada. I'm the CEO of SPL Tech. We are a boutique consultancy which specializes in DevOps on the cloud or on premises. Myself, I have 16 years of experience in software development and DevOps. I have some hobbies which include 3D printing, playing with machine learning, home automation, gardening, and so on. So, in our agenda for today, we'll talk about the main reasons why a WordPress website will slow down over time. Then we'll follow it with a list of recommendations and best practices that you can apply to speed up your WordPress website. Finally, we will briefly touch the topic of how you could scale your WordPress website if you still need to. Right, let's start. So you have created a shining new blog on WordPress and your site got really popular. Also you've added more functionality and you have noticed that your WordPress website is not as fast as it used to be. Welcome to the world of WordPress. You're definitely not alone in this experience. Thousands of WordPress users suffer from a slow WordPress website. But before you decide to throw away your WordPress website and rewrite it in another framework like Node.js or others, I recommend you to take a look at the potential causes for your WordPress website being slow, because they could be easy to fix. Whatever the cause, you can try to give it a lease of new life to your website, and you might be surprised at the results. So, one of the first things that you'll come across, and you need to understand why WordPress is slow, because the database design is inefficient. The WordPress database design was designed in such a way to give you maximum flexibility in adding functionality without having to constantly change the database schema whenever a new plugin is installed. Almost every content item in WordPress, be it a post, a product, a page, or anything else created by a plugin, creates an entry in WP Posts. And associated with that, each WP Post item will have one or more entries in the WP Post meta table. Normally one entry per attribute. So for instance, imagine you have created a product with 10 attributes. For each product entry in WP Post, you'll have 10 entries in WP Post meta. If the WordPress database was designed for efficiency and according to best practices for relation database, it would have 10 columns instead. No wonder then that after some time, a website with thousands of articles and maybe a large product catalog, if you use WooCommerce, will slow down dramatically. Unfortunately, it's not just WooCommerce that will create entries in WP Post and WP Post meta. Almost every plugin in the WordPress realm will do. The more data you have, and after some time, your database will run to a crawl with massive SQL queries with joins between WP Posts and WP Post meta that will take over a minute to run each. Now that we know that almost every WordPress plugin on earth will try to create content under WP Post and WP Post meta. So is it really a surprise that they need to use locks, database locks, to prevent race conditions in a generation of post IDs? By default, most WordPress installations with MySQL database run on the MyISAM storage engine. And this type of engine only supports table level locks. So any type of query on a table will lock it. A read lock for select statements and a write lock for insert update statements. This is very bad for performance. By default, WordPress creates a separate revision of a post every time you update it. This means that data stored for a post in multiple tables gets duplicated. To make matters worse, WordPress normally is configured with autosave functionality, which saves a revision of an article every 1 minute. And by default, there is no limit in the number of revisions for a post. And to make matters worse, there is no automatic mechanism to clean up those revisions later down the line. It is easy to see why the size of a WordPress database can grow exponentially. One of the reasons most WordPress websites slow down is also due to the high number and nature of plugins installed. Quite often these plugins come with lots of functionality and are free to use. However, in reality these plugins always come with an associated cost. First of all, anyone who installs this plugin will have no idea what PHP code they are running. This code will often have performance impacts because of the way they are designed. Also, any plugin updates in the future can bring unexpected consequences. It is all too easy to update a plugin and suddenly your WordPress website crashes. Each plugin will also increase the size of your database. And before you think that uninstall it will solve the problem, many plugins don't actually clean up the data they leave over in your WordPress database after you uninstall them. So one fake cron jobs, this is another cause for WordPress to slow down. Did you know that WordPress tries to run a cron job every time a user accesses the site? In fact, it's not a real cron job at all, because instead of relying on the OS to schedule a task, it relies on your visitors to trigger the job. This will inevitably slow down the website due to the fact that if a cron job requires to update some WordPress data, it will lock tables in the database. Of course, this is not what you intended. Now, the search. When you think things can't get any worse, unfortunately they do. We have learned about the inefficient storage of data in WordPress, and we've already talked about the infamous table locking, which makes matters even worse. The bigger your WordPress website gets, search becomes more of a necessity. You want visitors to your site to find the content they are looking for, and you want to optimize your website for SEO, which often relies in displaying content for popular keywords. By default, the WordPress search relies on the database to find its data. And this is the final nail in the coffin. The search will kill your WordPress website quickly if you don't do anything about it. Worst of all, if you do manage to get any search results on the website, they will not be very good at all. Right, so is the conclusion that we should throw away WordPress? Not quite. Let's not give up too quickly. So, there's a few easy fixes you can do. If you update PHP to the latest version, you can potentially improve your site performance by 300%. This is a real figure, actually. It comes down from the fact that if you upgrade PHP from 5.6, I believe, to 7.3, which is the latest, there is like someone actually measured the performance. So these are real figures. So other thing you can do, a no-brainer as well, minimize the number of plugins. Consider very carefully what plugins you are using. Less is more in WordPress, in the world of WordPress. The reason why you have the plugins in the first place are for good reasons. For instance, you might have decided to use the WPML plugin because you need to support more than one language and you need something to translate your content. Or perhaps you installed the Yoast SEO plugin because your site needs to be optimized for SEO. However, if you have a large number of articles already in your WordPress website, installing these plugins will make matters much worse. One of the easy reasons to understand that is, for example, WPML will duplicate your content per language. If you have, let's say, 100,000 entries in your WP post meta, it will potentially triple it, depending on how many languages you have. So it compounds on the problem that WordPress has in the first place. There's always other ways of meeting a requirement. So always think very carefully about using a new plugin. So something else that you can do to get performance gains, upgrading your MySQL database. If you're running on an old version of the MySQL database, it pays off to upgrade to the earliest version, as long as it is supported by WordPress. Also, ensure that you are using the InnoDB engine, which allows WordPress to do row level locking instead of table level locking. Next, try to implement a real cron job. We've already seen that the cron job that WordPress comes with is no good, so disable it. You can do that in WP config quite easily, and you can set up a real cron job. The next thing you can do, and this is a really easy fix as well, is like you can limit the number of revisions that you have for each article or each post. You can configure that in WP config as well. Now, we've already discussed about the WordPress search functionality not being fit for purpose. If you have a big website, you have really no choice. I think you need to replace it with something better. There are a few search engines available. My favorite is Elasticsearch, and you can make your search 10 times faster or even more, and more relevant. And consider also the amount of extra traffic you might get if suddenly your users can actually find any content in your website that they are looking for. There are plugins available in WordPress to make it easier to set up Elasticsearch without rewriting your code. Okay, it is one more plugin, but this one is for a good cause. Then consider caching. One of the easiest ways to make your website faster is to cache as much as possible. You can set up caching at many different levels. And before you think about it, don't try to do it in WordPress itself, because WordPress itself does its own caching quite often will result in a bigger database. You can cache things at the web server level. Nginx, which is my favorite web server, has a very good caching, lightweight, and it works like a charm. Also, if you can rely on third-party services. I highly recommend considering Cloudflare, which has 4 types of membership. You can start with a free membership that gives you some benefits. One of them, besides caching, is DDoS protection. Then you can pay for a bit extra. You can get more functionalities, like for $20 a month. So this is going to help you a lot, making sure that your WordPress website basically delivers more. Right, so next. So lastly, right, and this is before I finish, right? So you've done everything you've done everything in the book, right, that I've just talked about, and you still can't cope with the high levels of traffic. Actually, this is good. That means you are a victim of your own success. And this is a good problem to have, in my view. And what you should do first, before you just throw away WordPress, you should consider your infrastructure. For instance, let's say you are still running on a shared hosting plan. Switch to a dedicated host. Or if you're already running on a dedicated server, but you have a single WordPress instance, then you should consider adding more instances of your WordPress and also your database. It's not an easy topic, and we've done scaling of WordPress before, and it's a bit more complicated, and maybe I'm going to talk about it in the next webinar. Right, at this stage I don't have anything else to add, and if anyone has questions, I'm going to try to answer them. So you can leave, if you're on YouTube, you can actually leave some comments or questions in the live chat, and whatever you ask, I'll try to answer. Well, if there's no questions, you know, I'm quite happy that maybe you can send always an email or later on if you have any further questions, and I'll try to answer them offline. And yeah, that's it. Thanks a lot for joining us in this webinar, and I'll speak to you soon.